So the four functions of the unconscious, let's just review. From our last class, we've already talked about the unconscious, and we mentioned that, and you guys also did a little bit of research on this, the unconscious is it's a part of us that we cannot directly access, but it influences us in many different ways. And there are different parts. There's two parts of the unconscious. One of them is the personal unconscious, and the other one is the collective unconscious. And there were some good presentations on the personal unconscious. So today I'm going to look more at, well, I'll look at both parts, but I think this is a bigger focus on, not exactly. At the end, we're going to focus on the collective unconscious a little bit more. So what we're discussing today is what Freud, it's Freud's work, what he has said about the unconscious. And him and Carl Jung may or may not agree on everything. Maybe Carl Jung has added a lot more. Freud had no idea that we had a collective unconscious. Freud mostly spoke about the personal unconscious. So I'm going to add some stuff about the collective unconscious later on in the lecture. The difference is that the personal unconscious is based on the experiences that I have had in my life, and possibly the experiences I have had in past lives, if you believe that. And the collective unconscious is not based on personal experience. Collective unconscious is based on the experiences that all human beings have had, that we share, and it's the experiences that have been collected over thousands of years that still have influence on us. All right, so let's look at the four functions of the unconscious. Today we're going to discuss the conservative function. Conservative means to save. The dissolutive function, more about habits. The creative function, this is about, obviously, creativity, new ideas. And the mythopoetic function. This is probably the most interesting. It's about culture and influence on culture and influence on societies, how society is influenced and how different societies are structured, but also a lot of similarities. And then at the end, we're going to look at something called the hero's journey, which is a very, very interesting, it's a very interesting archetype, or it's a very interesting thing that influences how people live their lives. All right. Who's doing the first translation? Jason, are you here? Are you listening?
Yes.
Okay. Help me with the first part.
Sure.
So the first part of the unconscious is conservative. I'll do some examples of this, right? We have talked about this in the last class, so let's just build on it. The conservative function is to store memories. Now, let's say you're a child, you're 2 years old, you're 3 years old. Every experience that you have is stored, even though you don't remember them. It's like your eyes are video cameras and you are recording everything that you experience. You're paying attention to the people around you and learning how they have survived. This is the reason why, I think this is the main reason why the unconscious stores memories, especially at that very young age. It's about learning how to survive. So the people around us, parents especially, they have survived into their adulthood, right? They've survived for 20, 30, 40 years, however old they are when they have children. And as children, we have to pay attention, we have to learn. We cannot, first of all, we cannot depend on ourselves. We can't do anything for ourselves, especially young children. And we have to survive. We survive by paying attention to what people do and what people don't do. And this is how we learn how to live. Jason.
Conservative 是一种储存，就是它字面意思是储存，然后主要是可以帮助我们储存记忆，然后当我们还是小孩的时候，我们会不自主的把所有经历过的事情跟看到的事情给记下来，就算我们已经不记得了。然后其中的原因是因为那些我们所看到的事情，如果是那些大人做的因为他们已经顺利的活到了他们成年的时候，所以就是很多东西要学习，学了就可以帮助我们也同样进入到就是成年人的时候，这种也是一种生物的本能，来帮助我们去生存下去。
Okay, let's continue. So, when between the ages of 0 and 7, children are in a state of hypnosis. Do you know the meaning of state of hypnosis? It's almost like super learning. A state of hypnosis is where there is direct access to the subconscious mind or perhaps the unconscious mind. We're not completely sure. What we are sure of is the brainwave state of children. To have access to the conscious mind, meaning the part of your mind that can think logically, rationally, that can consider options, that can think about the past, that can consider what might happen in the future before making decisions, we use the conscious mind. To access the conscious mind, our brain waves become faster. We get into beta brain waves. Children almost never access beta brainwaves. It seems to be difficult or impossible for them. We're not completely sure why, but the theory is that between the ages of 0 and 7, the child is meant to learn as much as possible, which is why it is almost like it's just receiving. And it's not directly filtering. I can say the conscious mind is kind of like a filter. It's almost like, do I need to use this information? Is this information important for me or is it not? The child doesn't use that filter. Everything just goes in and is stored, and maybe it's sorted out into what is important, what is not important. Maybe it's not. Maybe everything is just stored as important because the child is in theta. The child's brainwave state is theta. Theta is super learning. Theta is that state of hypnosis where everything is directly going into the subconscious or the unconscious. And if I remember, subconscious is like 潜意识 and unconscious is 无意识. They are not the same. The subconscious, we have access to the subconscious. We can kind of access the subconscious, especially when we are in this state of hypnosis or when we are in theta brainwaves. But the unconscious, it's not possible. We cannot directly or even indirectly access the unconscious. So children are learning everything about their environment. They're in a state of hypnosis. Their brainwaves are theta, and they're paying attention to everything they see, everything they hear. Jason.
就是人们发现0到7岁的 TB， 他们可以进入一种超级学习模式，然后这种学习模式是一种叫做 theta brainwave， theta 脑电波的东西，这种模式可以让他们用他们的潜意识，还有他们就是无意识来是吸取大量的知识。他们不会，然后在这种模式下，他们不会用他们主要的意识去分辨什么东西对他们来说是会更有用的，应该学的，然后什么是可能没什么用不应该学的。他们几乎从来不会就是用我们现在绝大多数人天天都在用的beta brainwave， beta 就是有意识的去想东西，但是 BB 们他们在0到7岁就会大量的接受，大量的学习任何他们所接触到的东西。Okay,
continue. Now I want to give you examples. In the first time we talked about the unconscious, I have already talked about repression. Let me just refresh your memory with an example. Repression is where something inside us, some part of us, we experience some kind of negative situation, and then there's this part of us that takes the memory of that experience and it pushes it very, very deep down so that we almost forget, so that we can't directly remember that we've had that experience. Now, of course, there is some influence on us, but we might not directly be able to remember that experience very clearly. So repression is kind of a process that helps us to survive, because remembering something very terrible might not be helpful for us to continue with our life. And in our last class, I gave you the example of Skylar. Let me change the example this time. So let's talk about a very common example. So let's say the child is maybe 2 or 3 years old, and the mother and the father need to go to work. So they ask their brother, right? Let's say it's the uncle. They ask the uncle to help them to take care of their child while they are at work and nobody else is at home. So the uncle and the little boy or the little girl are at home, and maybe they're playing, maybe they're watching TV, or they're doing something at home, right? And the uncle touches the child in an inappropriate way. Maybe the uncle touches the child in a sexual way, and of course the child doesn't understand what the uncle is doing. But children also have sexual urges. All children have sexual urges. They don't understand them, but they can also feel sexually excited even at the young age of 2 or 3 or 4. They have the same sexual functions as adults. So in this kind of inappropriate touch, the uncle makes the child feel sexually excited, and this is a new experience for the child. But because the child is so young, and because the situation is not appropriate for someone so old to be doing that to someone so young, there's something inside the child that takes that memory and buries it very deep inside. The child represses that experience, and it's not that the child completely forgets. I mean, maybe the child, when they're older, would never remember that, would never remember having that experience. But that memory affects the child's personality, affects some of the child's actions as they're older. Perhaps they don't trust other people very easily. Perhaps they are afraid of having romantic relationships. Perhaps they are unable to connect with other people, and they don't understand why. It becomes part of their personality. It becomes just who they are. But what has happened is that this experience, repressed and held somewhere in their unconscious that they don't even remember, is directly influencing who they are today. Jason.
就是小孩他都会有一种都是 repression 的东西在，他这边意思是抑制压抑，就如果他们在他们小时候发生了一些不是特别好的事情，然后呢他们会把那个事情压抑到很深的地方，然后以至于他们以后可能就根本想不起来了。但是这种事情还是会在潜移默化的在影响着他们以后的行为啊、性格、思维模式。然后Bob举一个例子，就是一个小孩，然后他爸爸就很忙，然后让一个保姆或者舅舅去照顾他，但是那个人恰好是个禽兽，然后他对那个小孩做了一些就是不应该做的事情，比如说比较 sexual way 的触摸，然后就算小孩很小，他们还是会有跟成年人一样的就是兴奋，然后他们同样会有一样的感觉，但是因为这个事情它不太好，所以会被他们压抑的很深，就 就可能他们长大之后根本不记得了，但他们也许会，他们性格也许会因此就是无形的改变了，比如说不会再轻易的相信别人啊什么的。Okay.
Okay, let's do one last example for conservative. This one is kind of so with repression, for that previous example, not everybody has that experience. Maybe we have it in different ways. We repress different things. It's not always sexual. But in this next example, this is something that pretty much everybody has. And the reason why we know that is because everybody has very similar fears that they learn when they are children. We're not born with these fears. I shouldn't say everyone, I should say most people. The first fear, which is very common, is the fear that I am not enough. And the second fear is the fear that I am not worthy of love. Or if I say I'm not worthy of love, it kind of means that the fear that I don't deserve love. Now, why do we have these fears? And sometimes we have memories of this. Sometimes it's not always repressed. Sometimes it's not just a part of our unconscious. But sometimes it is. It depends on how serious or how often we have these kinds of experiences. So here's another experience that affects us. The child is, again, let's go with 2 or 3 or 4 years old. Remember that they are learning everything from their environment, and it's teaching them things about who they are and how they should be. It's also about survival, as I mentioned. So the child and the parent, they are in the supermarket. This is a very common experience. Parents take their children to the supermarket because nobody else can take care of them if they leave the child at home. And supermarkets are very smart. They know that children are easily attracted by especially candy. So in the checkout counter, there are many checkout lanes, right? And so let's say the parent has a shopping cart and the child is in the shopping cart, sitting, standing, whatever. Or maybe not. Maybe the child is walking with the parent. And when they're in the checkout counter, the child sees a lot of candy because, of course, the supermarket has placed it there for the children. In fact, you notice that it's usually quite low down because it's at the children's eye level, not usually the parent's eye level. So the children see the candy, different kinds of candy, and they pick up some candy and they tell their mother or their father, it's like, mommy, daddy, I want this candy. The parent knows that the candy is not good for the child, that it will affect the child's health. The child will not be able to sleep because there's too much sugar in the candy, and of course the parent is going to have bad sleep as well. If the child can't sleep, the parent is not going to be able to sleep. Sometimes parents are also stressed in those situations. Sometimes they feel that they can't explain the real reasons to the child. For example, if you eat this candy, it might lead to getting 糖尿病 or some other health issue as you get older. You might gain weight and become overweight. And explaining these things to the child, often these are things that the child has no experience with, doesn't understand, doesn't care about. So using logic in that situation, I mean, I'm not saying that it's a bad idea, but I'm saying that sometimes it's not very effective. And the parent may not be patient enough because of stress, because they're tired, to be able to think about a logical or a good reason, a real reason to convince the child why the candy is not good for them and why the parent will not buy the candy for the child. And if the parent tries to use some kind of logical thinking, it may not affect the child. The child will say, yeah, but I still want it, but I want it. I want the candy, mommy. I really want it. So what the parent does is they use emotional reasoning, something that creates maybe a negative emotion in the child to stop the child, because often logic doesn't work. Remember that the child does not have beta brainwaves. It doesn't use the conscious mind. It's just subconscious. And the subconscious, the language of the subconscious or unconscious, is emotions. So the child says, you can't have the candy. You didn't clean your room. You can't have your candy, but you can't have the candy because you didn't finish your dinner. The parent has to find a reason that the child can accept. And so the parent will go with simple reasons. Or you can't have the candy because yesterday you were very bad. You hit your brother, you hit your sister, you broke your toy, whatever. I mean, the child understands that. And the child will feel bad about that. It's a bit of guilt or it's shame or something like this. And maybe the child will be able to understand why they can't have the candy. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll just get angry or they'll get sad or they'll cry and say, I want the candy. And everybody around them will watch, will look at them, right? Because the child sometimes knows that if they do that, if they just cry and they're loud and they scream, the parents sometimes will just say, okay, I'll give you the candy, you can have the candy, just because they want the child to stop. Children are very clever. They understand that they can control their parents by using crying. Many children know that, especially when they're 2 or 3 years old. They definitely know that. So the parent uses some negative excuse, right? You're a bad child. You were bad yesterday. And what this does is, so this is an experience that I would say every child has, whether we remember them or we don't, because we don't really care how it's going to affect us, whether it's healthy for us. We just want candy. We want sweet things. So because of this experience, the child forms a belief. I am not good. I'm not a good boy, or I'm not a good girl. This is why my parent, my mother or my father, is not buying me the candy. This is why my mother or my father is not giving me what I want. I'm not good enough. If I was good, they would give me the candy. Of course, the child doesn't understand. The parent has other reasons why. But they have to use these simplistic reasons. But what this does is it creates a belief inside the child that they are not good, that they are not good enough. And also that because their parent is not giving them what they want, the child doesn't deserve love. I'm bad, so I don't deserve love. My mother doesn't love me because she said that I'm bad, and so she's not giving me this candy. She's not buying it for me. We have these kinds of experiences, and as we become older, we hold on to these beliefs or these fears. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. If I got good grades, my mother promised that she would buy me things. She would give me a dog or a cat, but I didn't get good grades in school. I'm not smart enough. And she didn't give me the thing that I wanted because she doesn't love me. I don't deserve love because I'm not smart enough. These beliefs or these fears affect us for the rest of our lives. And as I say, sometimes we remember these experiences, but many times we don't remember having these kinds of experiences in supermarkets when we are 2 or 3 years old. They are saved in our unconscious and they influence us for the rest of our life. Jason.
就这里刚举个例子说，说那些supermarket 他们很聪明，他们会把糖啊那些东西放到货架的底下，所以那些BB 就可以看到，然后他们就会跟他们爸妈要，然后父母有时候会不想给 BB 买糖，因为可能会就蛀牙啥这那的，然后同时如果 BB 要吃糖的话，然后如果他爸妈不买的话，也会觉得有一定的压力，然后有时候父母会尝试就是用比较逻辑的方法跟 BB 解释说什么，哎呀，如果你吃了这个可能会得糖尿病，可能会蛀牙什么的。但 BB 他们不会用那个逻辑的方式去思考，他们只会像之前提到的，用那种 theta brainwave 去想事情，就是根据他的潜意识无意识来行动，然后他们就只是想吃糖，然后很多时候你跟他们说那些逻辑的东西，通常都不会有太大的作用，他们还是会想要吃糖。然后这个时候爸妈有时候就会用他们可以听得懂的方式跟他们说，他们不能吃这个糖。比如说跟他们说昨天你是个坏 BB， 你打了你哥哥，或者打你弟弟，然后你把玩具给弄坏了，所以因为你是个坏 BB， 所以你今天不能吃这个糖，然后这会给 BB 造成一定的心理阴影就他们以后，比如说如果他们考试考差了，然后考试考差了就不能得到自己想要的东西，他们就会觉得自己不够聪明，然后总是会觉得自己可能这不够好那不够好，然后不值得，因为自己这不够好那不好，所以不值得父母的爱。然后这种想法，它会随着你的潜意识，可能会一直影响着你这一辈子。虽然这其中的记忆可能早就被忘了，但是它留下来的潜意识是一直存在于你的脑海里的。Okay.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Let's
No
do
problem.
the second one.